There are a lot of changes going on in our country right now. A lot of changes. And some of them seem huge, some of them seem less huge. But the reality is, we are now in a situation where there are things changing every single day. You may think that this is a political commentary video, and in some ways it is, but really what it is a video to talk about the psychological impact of the changes that we are experiencing. So get ready. My name is Dr. Dana Torpey-Newman, along with my husband, Dr. Eric Newman. We are Newman Psych, and we like to talk about all things psychology all the time. So in recent months, we have been experiencing several different changes that really kind of undercut the fabric of our society. We are really starting to come to terms with what are the rules, who follows them, and what are the consequences if you don't. And I think what we're discovering is that the rules are not equally applied to everyone. And now with these rules changing, we are going to see impacts on people's mental health, some of which seem pretty obvious, some of which seem a little bit more subtle. And so I want to talk a little bit about some of those changes. There will probably be many parts to this video, or many follow-ups to this video, because things are changing all the time, and we really don't know what the full extent of the consequences on the psychological well-being of all of us is going to be. But I want to start by talking about basic needs. So there is a construct that many people have heard of called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And basically what this says is that you need to have your basic needs met as the foundations. That means food, shelter, the things that are really about security, before you can move up on the hierarchy to deal with more like psychological wellness issues. And you go up in the hierarchy, the more you establish or accomplish having your basic needs met, to this point called self-actualization. And to me, when I think about what self-actualization is, it's really about being able to set up your life in a way that feels fulfilling. That is a very probably Maslow would not enjoy that very simple definition of self-actualization, but I think that that is mine for this purpose. And what we are finding is that there is no way, or decreasingly fewer ways, for people to achieve any sort of psychological well-being when all of their foundational needs are at risk. So I want to just highlight a couple of areas. They may not have impacted you yet, but they will. One of the things that is happening broadly is unemployment across sectors. So we know about the different parts of the government that are being shut down. Unfortunately, the people who were employed by the government, they have said to me, because remember, as a clinician, I get to hear from people who are impacted by all sorts of things. What people have said to me are things like, my skill set in the public sector is not transferable to the private sector. Couple that with all of the layoffs across different sectors that have happened, both public and private, and you have a ton of people trying to find jobs where there are not enough jobs for all of the people. This really puts their ability to meet their basic needs, food, shelter, basic medical needs, any sort of basic security, this puts that at risk. And it is unclear to me right now where all of these people who were employed, who were trying to do productive things for our society, where they're going to go. Another consequence of the mass layoffs across sectors is that corporations, so more private industry, they are basically, because they were laying people off since COVID stopped being an acute crisis. They had sort of blown up during COVID, and then when COVID was less of a societal crisis, they really started to lay people off. And I have many people that I know that have not been able to find a job for a year or more. People who are perfectly well qualified, worked hard for their whole careers, there are no jobs. And so what private industry is doing is they are laying people off, and they are basically saying the people that are left are going to perform the jobs of the people who we let go. So if you have a job, you'd think like, oh, I feel so secure. The problem is what most people are saying is the job I have is working me to death. And basically, private industry can do that because there are so many unemployed people right now that they can kind of use people until they can't take it anymore. And then if they leave, they bring in someone else to do that with. That's really problematic for us as a society to have a whole bunch of people whose basic needs are in jeopardy. That is when you end up in a situation where you are at increased risk for more violence, both domestic violence, so in the home, finances are tight. That's a pretty big risk factor for domestic violence. Also societally, I'm very fearful that the increasing kind of vice on people will lead to more violence in our society in general. Additionally, when people do not have jobs, most people have their health care, including their mental health care, through their employer. So if we have a whole bunch of people that can't access any medical care, we are going to exacerbate our mental health crisis. I just want to point out, because I think it's important to remember this, that one of the things that many elected officials have said over the last several years is that mental health is a primary concern in things like gun violence. It is my opinion, based on like my training and my expertise, that making it so that people can't meet their basic needs and also do not have access to services, that does not seem like a way to be taking care of the mental health crisis that we say that we all agree upon. So that's one issue, this having people's basic needs in jeopardy and all of the mental health impacts that follow, the negative impacts on mental health. Another issue is actually fear. So if you think about all of the different groups of people who feel like they are under attack right now, that is not a great place for people to be psychologically, to be fearful of going to your home or leaving your home, to be fearful to have your kids go to school, to be fearful that your marriage may not be legal soon, to be fearful that you will not be hired because there is something about you that is not a white man, because those are the only people that don't fall under diversity, equity, and inclusion. So you have a whole bunch of people who are extremely fearful, and that is not a recipe for people functioning to their fullest extent in our society. If we think about what we lose by having people so fearful that they shut down their lives, that they are so withdrawn, that they're not contributing all that they can to our society, that is a huge loss for us, and that impacts everyone. Another issue that I want to bring up is this idea of people being emboldened. So that's different than people being desperate or fearful. And this is more about people who have power having the ability to use their power in really terrible ways. So I'm going to give you an example from my professional life. I talk about health insurance companies all the time, as you know. Eric does as well, because they are ruining our medical system, and I will never stop fighting to make it public how much damage they do. I have noticed, since corporations have now been given even more power than they had before, that they have been terrible to myself and my clients. Let me give an example from the health insurance industry. Family members of active military service members, they are often the recipients of health insurance from TRICARE. And so I'm in the TRICARE network because, again, accepting health insurance is the right thing to do, even though it is infuriating. And I see many family members of active duty service people. And they, every year or two, TRICARE sells their contract to a private health insurance industry. So like Humana or Health Net or one of those. So they made a change in January and they are not paying their bills. So when I called to try to say like, hey, it is March, what is happening here? I've provided these services. You should be paying the bills. It was impossible to get a human on the phone. When I did get a human on the phone, following all of the prompts appropriately, the person who answered said, this is for the service members. This is not for providers. And instead of transferring the call, hung up. That to me is behavior even I have not seen in the worst circumstances with health insurance companies. It's things like that. I have another client where there are disability concerns. And I've noticed that the insurance company that is dealing with the disability claim has upped the ante in terms of what they are asking for. And it's clear that they are trying to terminate the disability claim, despite the fact that there is plenty of legitimacy to it. These are the types of things that I mean by being emboldened. One of my clients also told me that this applies on an individual basis as well. So this isn't just about corporations feeling so empowered that they don't have to provide the services that they should be providing and are contracted to provide. This is also happening on an individual basis. So a client of mine described being at a pharmacy picking up a prescription and witnessed a pharmacist letting an elderly man know that he was eligible for some vaccine. And the man started screaming at the pharmacist all about how vaccines are a hoax and saying things like, we won, and like angrily attacking the pharmacist and screaming at the other people standing in line. These are things we don't do as a society, but now there is this sense of being emboldened that allows people to do it. These are the things that are really, really concerning, because if you really break down the foundation of our society and there are no rules anymore and people and corporations can bully other people, can not do their part of what the contracted agreement was, we are headed down a very, very bad road. And we are going to have even more people struggling with their mental health than we did before. And that was a whole lot because, again, we were in agreement that we were in a mental health crisis. So I really want you to start to notice as you engage in your day-to-day world, where are you seeing this? What types of things are you seeing that make you feel as though we are no longer operating from the same rules that we have been operating from for decades? What are the things that you are experiencing that reflect people being emboldened or corporations being emboldened? And where does this lead? I don't have a lot of answers to this. I wish that I had some sort of, like, here's something that you can do. But I think the only thing that we can do right now is to be aware and to be talking about it. And that involves educating elected officials about like, hey, you say you care about mental health, but here are 3 concrete ways that we are harming people's mental health. How can you support that? If you've gotten anything out of this and enjoyed the content, please like and subscribe and share our videos everywhere. We will be talking about these issues a lot in future videos because they're impacting all of us. They're fast moving, and it's important that we talk about them and address them. Until next time.